Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our seminar on starting an NGO. I'll just put my video on just for a little while so you can just maybe see me, but once we start the presentation, I'll then take it off. It's good. I think we have people that are joining now, and maybe more will join as we continue, but we'll start. Yeah, if technology gives me a few problems, please bear with me. All right, there we go. What we want to do today, so the idea, we're just going to start off by introducing ourselves. I see people already introducing themselves in the chat box, so that's good. We just want to go over an approach that we have. So there's an approach that we have to sustainable NGOs, and something that we think is key for anyone starting an NGO. We call it an OPF approach. You'll find out more about that later. We want to go over key areas of success. We want to go over ways to register an NGO in Zimbabwe. We'll take a look at also how it's done in Zambia, Malawi, and maybe discuss the UK as well. Key for us is then discussing how KFM can help you start your NGO, and then we'll round off with a question and answer session. We might just rush through the first parts because I think what's key is then discussing or getting to discuss with you the different areas that you might need help with or questions that you might have for us, so we can then engage and discuss. We had this session sometime in December, 21st of December, I think it was, and we were repeating it again for those that were not able to attend. And my name is Kudzai Midzi. I'm the managing consultant of KFM Consultants. I'm here with a small team. Ladies, can you maybe just introduce yourselves?
Evening, everyone. My name is Tafadzwa Kafesu, and I'm part of KFM Consultants.
Michelle, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Michelle.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session this evening. My name is Michelle Gwati, and I'm marketing coordinator at KFM Consultants. So if you need any more information about the services that we offer at KFM Consultants, I'm your person. So I'm just going to be leaving my email address in the chat platform in case you need to clarify on anything. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michelle. Maureen?
Okay, hi. Hello, everybody. My name is Maureen. I am an organizational change and development strategist. I'm also a practitioner working and a consultant working with KFM Consultants this particular issue. So yeah, good to be with you.
All right, thank you. Thanks, ladies. And welcome to everyone else who's here. I think we've seen the introductions in the chat boxes. If you haven't, just introduce yourself in the chat box, and then we'll also take a look later on as we go on. We sent out a questionnaire. I'm not too sure how many of you managed to see that questionnaire. For us, it was very important. It gave us a rough idea of who to expect in the session, where the people were from. So we then noticed that I think from the people that responded, the majority were from Zimbabwe, based in Zimbabwe. We had quite a number in the UK, and then one person from South Africa as well. If there's anyone from another country, which is not those three, just also let us know in the chat box. We'd be happy to know where you're from. And I think for us, why we're having this seminar will be key. But let me just talk a bit about KFM, possibly, what we do as KFM. So KFM works with NGOs. We've been operating since 2004 as an organization. We're really passionate about helping people put in place effective NGOs. And for us, it's about the work that these organizations do. And how the company was started was by seeing how well NGOs were serving communities. But the sad part was that many of them were failing, because then they would have good ideas, but not have the systems in place to support those ideas. So even from our response, we saw lots of interesting responses about what inspired people to start their NGOs. Some felt it's their passion. Some, had a passion for youth. Some felt it was their calling. Some were not happy with the inequalities and poverty that they were seeing around them, with people who had come up from humble beginnings and were intent on then sharing some of what they had been able to accumulate with people in similar situations from where they had come from, with people who had skills in public health, who then wanted to also then come back and contribute to their country after working in the UK, for example, and also just giving. A lot of people said they just want to be able to give back through an NGO. So the passion was there. I would then ask, so you want to start this NGO, how many of you are registered? But maybe we found that only one out of the people that had responded had registered an NGO, but everybody wanted to register. Everyone responded, said, yes, we want to register. Most of them trusts. Some people wanted to register PVOs. Some were not sure what sort of organization, but any sort of non-profit organization they wanted to set up. And there were challenges. I think a lot of people then came up with, so why can't you set up the NGO? What challenge are you facing? And with different responses, there were issues of registration, there were issues of money to start the work, there were issues of not knowing how or even where to start. Funding came in lots of times, networks and partnerships, just a need to build that as well. Not being able to know where to get HR resources. And then the last one was maybe not getting good board members. Where do I get good board members to help me run my NGO? Was the question that we received. And for us, that is the purpose for this session that we're having. Because we've come across so many people that want to start NGOs, the passion is there. Some even begin, but then get stuck along the way, facing these issues that people responded to us on as well. So we're going to then, I think, just take a look at our experience and what we've seen works for NGOs before we round off with maybe what it is we can then do to help you. Maureen will take us through the OPF approach that we use as an organization. So Maureen, can I hand over to you?
Yes, could I by all means, let me start by saying, wishing everybody compliments of the new year and the season. It was really a hard year of people who are change agents, for people who are professionals, mothers, brothers, and sisters. So I'm hoping that you found time to recoup and re-energize. And 2020 has started off on a very bad note, as all over the world we are experiencing a resurgence of the pandemic, and in that comes also an accelerated or an amplified need from community intervention, and the need for non-profit entities, in that we are bracing ourselves also for a year of impact. And I think this is an idea. If you want help, always wondering how can I do that? Perhaps this meeting or this webinar will be a start for you to start acting on something. And at this point, all hands need to be on deck. So as Kudzai said, we are passionate about servicing the non-profit sector. and making sure that they are as impactful as possible. They're efficiently run, they're effective in their operations, but most importantly, they actually live up to their goal. So how we do our work over the years, I think has been, as Kuzai also alluded, has been, we've learned from experience that a lot of people looked at an organization in a skewed view. You know, they either overemphasize on something or underemphasize on something or leave out something in totality. That's when we devised what we call the OPF approach for organizational growth, development, and sustainability. And what this OPF approach, I'm not too sure what's happening with my apologies with tech. Hello.
Hi, Maureen. Sorry, we're getting a lot of feedback from you. I don't know if there's any electrical appliance or something. I don't know.
I think she's got two gadgets on, Maureen, so you'll need to turn off one of your gadgets.
Hello.
Yes, okay, we can hear you now.
Can you hear me? Oh, yes. Perfect. Apologies for tech, guys. Yeah, it does that. Anyway, so what I was saying earlier before my technological breakdown was that as KFM, we've learned over the years that non-profits either overemphasize on finance or overemphasize on their programming, and they either underemphasize organization and all of that. But then what we've learned as an organization in the context of sustainability is that the organization, finance issues, and programming are equally important if you are going to be sustainable as a non-profit organization. And for startups, it's even more important for you to equally look at these three, right at your planning stage, at your conceptualization stage, registration stage, because when you start well, you most likely would end well, impact well, and do everything that you want to do very well. So the OPF approach is really about emphasizing that in everything that you do, be it strategy development, be it planning, you should place equal emphasis on organization, programming, and finance. And when you talk about organization, that's when we're saying you should look at your strategy. Do you have a strategy in place? Do you have human resources in place that can support the realization of your goal? When you talk about governance, who's going to steer the ship, so to say? There's profit his own sort of the internship coming through. So you need to have that thought through to say, how are we going to model? How are we registered? What are the legalities that we need to look at? But if you get that right and you forget programming, most likely you will not be sustainable. So when it comes to programming, you need to have a clear picture in terms of what programs we want to do, what projects are we going to do, what activities are we going to do. And a lot of nonprofits tend to overemphasize on programs, because they think that's where the impact is. But the programs are run by efficient organizations that also handle their finances very well. So it's not enough to just look at the programming, but you have to look broader and integrate the organizational dynamics and the financial issues in there. But when it comes to programming, look at your partnerships. Do you have the relevant skill set to actually realize the impact that you want when you do your activities? But again, finance is very important because it oils everything together, but it's not the end of it all. It's not everything. It needs to be you need to work with it within this three triangulated model, which is the OPF approach. So our emphasis is that as you're thinking, I know there's someone who said, I have no idea. I don't even know where can I start. You have to put equal emphasis on all of those three. But the orange circle that you see is that whilst you're doing that, of constantly monitoring and evaluating your performance, you should have a culture of saying, how well have we done? What can we do better? What have we done so well that we need to build on? So the OPF approach just says, because I'm very mathematical, I'm a chemist, is that sustainability is a function of the organization and the programs in the finance, but all of this is in the context of constantly checking back progress. How have we done? Do we need to do better? Where and how? Next slide, Kodzai. Hello?
Can you see the next slide?
Okay.
Now on organization.
Mr. Midzi? Okay, so I know, oh, by the way, Faith Yamkapa, I've been following KinderCare for a year, so it's good to see you here. And yeah, it's okay. It's good to see familiar faces. And one thing that we know is KFM is that as much as we've amassed a lot of non-profit organization, we also know that in the participants that are actually with us today is a lot of expertise, a lot of practical experience as well. So I know Faith from KinderCare, I've been following that from Junior Chief Zimbabwe as well. Gertrude Gwenzi from the University of Joburg. I know you do research on child welfare, and I've read a couple of articles that you've done to input something or emphasize something that you might have forgotten. Please do use the chat box. But anyway, so in the OPF approach, when you're starting, how do you use that framework when you're thinking of conceptualizing your idea, or maybe translating that concept that is in your brain and translating into something that's on paper, getting registered and setting up your NGO for impact? Because I know everybody who's joined us is wanting to change something that they've noticed needs to be changed. So when you do that, you then go to the organization bit. So key things to consider now. You go to the organization and you ask yourself, okay, who are we, or who do we want to, what is the cause that we exist for and why? So I know the survey that was administered by the KFM team was literally asking you that. So if you say our cause is youth inclusion and youth development, why are you doing it? What have you noticed? Because the moment you're clear about that, it helps you in keeping in line with the impact. It's very easy in NGO world, in non-profit sector, to get entangled in a whole lot of issues because everything is just so interrelated. But it's very clear, it's very important that as you start, you have your cause clearly cut out and you ask yourself, why do we exist? Because you need to constantly be remembering that as you're doing your programming and checking yourself against that. And then you need to look at your strategy, because you don't get into business without a plan. You don't go into a war without a plan. So similarly, in the non-profit sector, you need to be strategic about it. You need to have planned ahead of time in terms of what are we going to do, who are we going to do it with, how are we going to be impactful, how is success going to be measured, how will it look like? So strategy component of planning under organization. You also need to look at operational model, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the operational model. The changes that have happened in the nonprofit sector over the years, it's been such that because of the global recession of 2008, I don't know if you follow, and I know people follow, there's been a shrinking of the funding base. You know, back in the 90s, the funding was awash. You know, you could just get donor funding whenever you'd want. But over the years, because of economic problems, 2008, and now we're actually in another recession as we speak, the funding pool is going to be reduced. And because of that, philanthropic funding is reduced, and that has impacted the amount of funding that is available. So much that there's now consideration, or the buzzword now has become a social enterprise. So you need to think, are you going to run as a traditional organization that is dependent on donor funding and consider the risks that come with it, or you're going to operate as a social enterprise where you're able to run income generating projects with the hope that the process and the profits that you get can be channeled back into furthering the cause. One of the most problematic thing that has come with that is that with the shrinking funding basis, that a lot of funders no longer fund for administrative things like salaries or fuel for your staff members or capacity development for your staff members. But that is very essential if you're going to continue operating. So you need to think about your business. In business terms, we'd call it business model, but in the nonprofit sector, we'd just say it's an operational model. You need to think about it as you're thinking, as you're starting up. You also need to think about organizing what skills are needed. Believe me, it's not enough to just have a passion. I noted and I loved it because I can so relate when somebody responded and said, I'm doing this because it's my calling, because I can relate. But it's not enough to have a calling. You also need to have requisite skill set to manage, to run the processes that are involved, because it's very technical as well. So one of the things that you always need to ask yourself is what skills are needed to make the organization thrive. There's a person, Kudzai, next slide. There's a person responded in your in the survey who said, I'm hoping that these questions will also kickstart you in terms of answering those, and then we can help each other as we go. So once you've answered the organizational questions, you now need to go to the programming and say, what key things do I need to consider and ask myself, you know? And you go again and ask yourself, what is the social cause? Because you need to be very clear about it. My social cause, the problem might be gender-based violence. So, but what is it? How do we term it? Gender equality. Somebody might say my social cause is world peace. And you've got to think about it and say, is it feasible? Is it within reach, you know? So you need to, again, to constantly ask yourself, what is your social cause? Why do you want to do? Because you always have to make sure that you stick to the rationale behind why you're doing this. But as you're doing that, you need to look at key issues related to the social issues, because in the end, research and development becomes a key component in NGOs, because everything is going to get the right audience. You need to know how you need to show value of what you're doing. So for instance, why should somebody care about public health for equality? So you need to understand that it's in the context of the sustainable development framework in which we are operating with until which you're operating, which everybody's operating under until 2020, and then you can make a cause from there. Or maybe you get an audience from the Minister of IT and you're working with girls and girls empowerment. You like, but it's in line with the Information Act, Cyber Security Act that you recently do ABCD, you see. So you need to have to know key issues that are related to your cause so that you get people to care, you know, about why you're doing it, and you get people to partner with if you need partnering and collaboration. One of the things that you need to look at is where and for whom do we want to do these activities? What we noted in our research is a snippet, because we're not going to be able, due to time constraints, to talk about everything that we've maybe accumulated over the years, is that there's a lot of focus on urban settings or maybe rural settings. We don't see that there are areas of gray that most likely do not have people working within them, but also need attention. So a lot of people would just say, I want to work with girls, but in town. But you also need to look at it in the context of who else has been working there, you know? Who else has been working there? What have they been doing? And what skills are needed? So the issue of skills and finance and cause are recurring in everything that you do. What skills do I need for me to successfully run projects and program? One trend, the last question that you need to ask yourself that is listed on that slide is, who can we partner with? I can safely tell you, because I also run an NGO myself, a small community-based organization, is that because of the economic situation globally, the recession that I alluded to, the shrinking funding base that I talked to earlier, referred to earlier, you can never go at it alone. And even more so when you're a startup, you need to ride onto already existing NGOs, build your brand, and then work from there, you know. So the key question is always partner and collaborate. Who can we partner? So we always encourage people not to look at each other as enemies, but or competitors, not enemies, sorry, but as people that we can collaborate, because at the end of the day, it's not about my name, it's not about my legacy, it's about the impact, and that's why we're doing it. And then when it comes to finance, I've got to tell you, I just have to leave this part to Kudzai, because he is a finance guru. And Kudzai, maybe you can explain what people need to look at when they're looking at finance.
Okay, so I think the most important thing to understand about finance, the first thing is there's nothing to fear in finance. So unlike Maureen, who's really scared of finances, I'm hoping when you're starting your NGOs, you focus on this area without fear, because a lot of people are scared of numbers. But you find it's not really about numbers per se. What you want to concern yourself about is, so you have all these ideas, but how are you going to resource it? How are you going to resource your organization? And we're not just talking of the money aspect, we're also talking of the non-financial resources that you need. So that strategy on how am I going to mobilize my resources is key. Where are you going to get your money from? I think you'll find in most cases when you start an NGO, those initial costs you're going to have to meet yourself. So there's going to be a need for some sort of personal investment on your part. But then you need to then understand, who am I approaching? Am I going to approach my friends? Am I going to crowdfund on online and on social media? Am I going to approach funding organizations? Am I going to approach private organizations and corporates? So all that is important for you to then plan and strategize. Who do I approach, and then what do I want to use the resources for? So you need to have a clear plan on what you want to use the resources for. But also key is then what systems are in place to ensure that you have accountability and transparency, especially considering that you're managing other people's money. So your financial strategy is important, your resource mobilization and fundraising is key, and also the systems in place are also critical for you to be able to then overcome this fear of finances and then see how well it can work for you. Okay, Maureen, I'm done with the finances.
Thanks, Kudzai. Thank you. You know, one of my resolutions for 2021 is that I am seriously going to take up a lot of finance for non-finance workshops that you guys offer, because I do dread when it comes to number crunches, and I really suck at that. And donor fund or funding partners really want to for us to get on point. So yeah, I promise I'm going to do better. But having done that, we've talked about the organization, the finance, and the programming. So how do you know you've started well? You know, how do you know you have set a good foundation? Because if you set a good foundation, you're most likely going to build a strong and steady building and achieve impact beyond anything imaginable, you know. So using the same framework OPF approach, you can use it to outline indicators of a good start. So if you've started well, you know, and these things have to happen concurrently. So starting it also takes a lot of your time, because there are so many things that you need to do at the same time. So if you've started well with relation to the organization, of course, one of the key indicators will be you've registered according to the laws of the land that you're operating in. And I love that because I emphasize that KFM does not only work in Zimbabwe, but also works across the African region, and has got linkages in the UK in particular. So an indicator of success is legal registration. So for that person that I keep on emphasizing to say, I don't know where to start, the idea for us to say we've started is that you need to be registered. And then when you've registered, one of the key things that they're going to ask you for you to even register is, do you have a board in place? So good corporate governance practices or measures that are in place. So we need to see that you have a skilled and driven board in place. And this board, a lot of people, I know, because I always emphasizes on how a lot of people just pick their friends and say, you know what, can you just be on my board? Just be there, you know, so that I register. But it's not enough to have friends in your board, because in your early stages, it's very important that you have a supporting structure or support structure in the form of your board in terms of marketing and building the brand, so to speak. So the skills come in handy, and driven is very important, because they need to share the same vision. Because at this point, when you're a startup, you don't have much to show but the desires of your heart, your need to effect change. So a skilled and driven board should be in place. And then you must have done your human resources scoping to say, so who's going to work for us? you know, and have a strategy to say, if we're not going to be in a position to hire people full-time, so where are we going to get people who may volunteer, or if we absolutely need to, where do we outsource skills in terms of consultants who come and help us? And above all, you must have a strategic plan. You must have a plan for like 2-3 years. And I know I actually feel small talking about strategy, because I know I've noted a number of people in our participants list who I know have done a lot of strategy development. But strategic planning is very important. You need to have a clear vision of where you want to be versus where you are. And part of that is then entails that you have an established profile, you see. So if you have that, with regards to organization, you started well. And then with regards to your finance, okay, with regards to your finance, you know you've started well when you have a resource mobilization strategy. At this point, when I talk about strategy, don't think about something that is fancy, something that is written down and can be followed down, you know, not something that's so technical. But as long as you've put your ideas onto paper and developed it as a plan, then it counts for a resource mobilization strategy. You need to have internal controls in place. Do you have a bank account? Who signs for it? If that person is not there, who checks for it? Who purchases things? Who talks to clients? You know, you need to have internal controls in place. Audits. How do we review our financial performance so that we also don't fall prey to the cancer of corruption, fraud that is quite popular within the sector as well. And then when you've done your programming, or you've thought about your programming right, you would have established what we call thematic areas. Remember when I said social causes? Social causes are very broad. You can say I want to do, like in my case, I work with educate, with the youth and youth education. But education itself is broad. What kind of education am I talking to? Is it non-academic or it's academic? And what elements feed into that? Am I going to feed into policy? So you need to have established thematic areas to say, as Community Hope Trust, which is the organization that I lead, we are an education interested organization, and our thematic area is policy. We are interested in leadership and skills development, and so on and so forth. And then you need to also have conceptualized your projects and your programs. Again, startups, it's all about converting your ideas that are in your brain onto paper. And the project conceptualization is quite technical. You need to have relevant skill set that you need to sort for. That's your writing of your proposal, project proposal, concept notes, or responding to grants and all of that, you know. So that's how you know you've started well. Because I think at this point, what we just need is to just start. And when it comes to monitoring and evaluation, you should have in your head or written down, you should have an idea to say, after 6 months, we have a report on financials. After 6 months, we call on Kudzai and his team to conduct an assessment of our internal controls on whether they're sufficient or not. Or every morning with the team, we have a progress check in terms of what's happening within Zimbabwe that is going to affect our programming, or we check on how our relationships are with potential funders. So monitoring and evaluation, again, you also need to have a plan of progress assessment, performance assessment, and all of that. At this point, before we go to the resource mobilization, Kudzai, I know we can be a little bit intense. I would love for anybody, Dr. Gwenzi, I've seen that there's you registered a consultant as a way to possibly fund your NGO idea. Is it a tangible way? So is it fair? Is it, so far it has gone so well. It has not gone so well since it is one-person firm, and I mostly have been doing it part-time due to the need to survive whilst I build. How can I manage and merge two things, consultant and NGO, in terms of operations? Have not registered an NGO yet. Could I maybe, before we go to the next part of the session, would you want to respond to that? I can respond to that after you're done.
Right, that's fine. I can just answer it quickly. So I think there are two ways, Dr. Gwenzi, you can do this. One is to register your private consultancy as a private firm, and you make your profits, and then you channel some of your money towards an NGO. Or we went a similar way. So KFM Consultants, for example, we were profit making. But what we then did was we took on a project that we started as a firm, and it was our staff working on it, which then over the years grew to an extent that now we've been able to register a separate NGO on its own, and you know we're winning it out of our firm. But it's been with us for the last 10 years or so. So we've been channeling part of our profits towards that non-profit activity. But another thing I think Maureen mentioned earlier on, a social enterprise, is you could then register your NGO, which provides these consultancy services. So you're then generating your own income as the NGO through the consultancy. Of course, the difference then with that is you're not then drawing profits. It then becomes, the money that is made there becomes a surplus within the non-profit social enterprise that you'd have registered, so that you don't pay tax on it. If you want to pay tax on it, then you then need to declare that you're taking out some profit. So I think those are two options that you could take in following it that way. Do it through the consultancy, and then maybe after it's grown, after some time, you can then register a separate NGO or register a social enterprise, which provides those consultancy services, but also provides services of the charity that you have in mind.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'm not so sure. Charity, do you have something else that you want to add? Because I was going to speak to the issue of your being a part, doing the non-profit bit part-time because you are also working to make ends meet. Okay. That said, what has become trend, and I also do it, is that when people who usually want to be change makers, it's a personal conviction. It comes from an observation of something. Either you go through something primarily as a victim, or someone was affected by it, or you observe within the community and it pains you. But as you're an individual that way, you also need to make ends meet. And I understand why. Then I've noted that a lot of people like Charity or like myself start an NGO, but we also hold formal jobs for which we're getting an income from. And it is also from those formal jobs that we're able to maybe channel $100, $400 towards the nonprofit entity. And again, this comes to respond to that. As you start now, you need to have a support system that I was alluding to. You know, once you have one thing that I'll tell you, Charity, for free is that you need to register, because there will never be now I'm okay, I'm going to do it. And yet the need will always be there. So once you register, you now need to surround yourself with people that are passionate about the cause and that can support you in your efforts. So for instance, your board of directors, if you get maybe a friend of yours who is a good strategist like yourself, you know, they can help you in coming up maybe with in terms of thinking or maybe brainstorming ideas. So the board of directors becomes your support system. You also need to surround yourself with young, energetic people that are willing to volunteer their time because they're so passionate about causing, making a change. So you need to make sure that you don't burn out as one person, but surround yourself with a support system that enables you to do that. So, but I'll tell you that the biggest step is for you to get registered, start thinking about it, because there is never a time when you're like, oh, well, I'm free. We always have responsibilities as professionals, but also as individuals in our own social lives. So I think you need to start, but make sure that when you do start, you invest in making sure that you have a support system surrounding you so that you also don't burn out. Having said that, there are three issues, and Charity has already in your question assured us that there are three things that really burden a lot of people that start NGOs. One of them is mobilizing resources. You know, yeah, money does make the world go around, and that is true. And the resources that we are talking about mobilizing should not be thought of in monetary terms only. They can be financial and non-financial resources. So as you're starting, because we feel this is a key issue, you need to think of, where am I going to raise funds? Where am I going to mobilize the resources? Where am I going? One of the key resources that you need to mobilize is human resources. So I know, Charity, you and UJ, if the last article that that I read about you was true, can we resource within your peers in terms of people that can help you in that way? When it comes to volunteers, can you reach out to Kudza and say, who do you know in Zimbabwe who works with young people who are just graduated, will be willing to work with me in Zimbabwe, you know? So you need to start thinking or scoping what kind of resources that you need. And when you come up with a fundraising strategy, or what we call, oh, sorry, Gertrude, I am so sorry for constantly referring to you as Charity. Once you've scoped the resources that you need, you then need to come up with a fundraising strategy. Let's not make it fancy or technical. Let's just think, how are we going to get it? So we need, for instance, because I will tell you that registration will cost this much. How are we going to get money to register? So maybe, can we do a crowdfunding? Can we throw a dinner? Can we do a raffle ticket to get the 400? Or we can approach USA, get 3,000, you know what I mean? And then once you scoped, you then do fundraising. And then when you've done that, you need to understand, then you need to have an understanding of the matrix or the landscape of donors, what we call funders, because we are running away from using donors. They prefer being called funding partners now. And you need to understand that funders has gone beyond the traditional USAID, Oxfam, Trace kind of institutional funding. They are also, the funding frame matrix is expanded to include corporates who are willing to help you with either material resources that you need, or even financial help. And when you do that, you need one thing that we also need to talk about is, are you able to raise your own income, you know, in the social enterprise or not? And every time, I do not shy from talking to people and telling people that at this point, if you are thinking of starting an NGO, you should consider the social enterprise route, because it's absolutely imperative. Because you must think of an idea, maybe you can fundraise for $400 to start a poultry project, where the profits that you get from that project becomes income for an intern who's going to stand in as your clerk or something like that, you see. So yeah, that's one thing that you need to do. But as you think around that, I would like all of you to pay your attention to the matrix that is there, the 4x4 square diagram that is there with 2 arrows for a bit. And once we're there, I'm going to explain it, because it shows us exactly where we want to be, and it would give you an idea. And thank you, Tanaka, for already highlighting that you volunteer to work for a cause. So it'll be nice for people to get in touch, you see. So this is very good to always network and get human resources that are able to work with you. So in terms of that matrix, one thing that we always then tell people that are wanting to get into the civil society space is that there are 4 types of funding that you need to look for, right? On your left, there's an arrow that is going upwards that called restrictions, because when you get funding, it comes with conditions, whether you're getting it from Maureen as an individual, or you're getting it from USAID or an international NGO that is funding activities. It comes with conditions. You can do this, but you can't do this. You can buy that, but you can't buy that, you know. And then at the same time, for you to get the funding, on the lower bit of the matrix is an arrow that is going to the right that says time. The process of resource mobilization is something that takes time, and it's either takes more time when you're dealing with international NGOs naturally because of the bureaucracy and the distance that is there. But when you're general fundraising from Maureen, who's your neighbor, you can quickly get money or resources that you need thereafter. But there are four types of funding that fall into the mix. And if you want to be sustainable, you should get funding from all of these four streams. What we call general fundraising, I'm going to start at the bottom left. What we call general funding is funding that comes from small initiatives of or strategies or activities such as raffles, tickets, or even crowdfunding falls into that, where you get money that you are looking for maybe general purpose, but you're getting it from people that are close to you. It takes so little time to get that funding, and the restrictions and conditionalities that come with it are lesser compared to funding that you get from maybe international donors. And then on still on the left is project fund boot camp for girls, you know. So it's project directed, and it's specific to an activity, and you go around looking for people who can fund that particular activity. And that project funding, sometimes you usually get it from already established funding implementing institutions, and because of that, it comes with a little more restrictions and conditionalities compared to fundraising that you do with your neighbor. And then there is program funding going to the right, top right, where there's program funding. Programs are bigger than projects. Project subset of programs. Program funding is you want to look for funding for 3 years. You want to do the boot camps annually for a period of 3 years. That is bigger in terms of the scope of the money, of the funding that you need, but it also takes so much time. So that means ideally you'd want to get it from an institution that is already existing, that funds up to the tune of a lot of money, you know, and the restrictions therefore comes in a number of ways, and the time it takes is so long. But what I want you to pay attention to is the core funding now. A lot of people have been operating on the 3 other types of funding and neglecting the core funding. The core funding is any funding that you get from income generating initiatives, assets that you have as an organization that can give you income so that you can fund yourself when the other 3 revenues are not available. So the core funding becomes critical. So when you know about this matrix, you then can have a strategy that then says we need to have at least a proportion of our funding coming from all the 4 matrix. We don't encourage everybody to run on either one wheel and neglect any one stream of funding, but you need to make sure that you populate that funding matrix and have your eggs laid in a lot of baskets, so to speak, so that when the rainy day comes, you'll be okay. Next slide, Kudzai. Okay, once you've done resource mobilization, right? That's the heart of funding, you know. And for those people that are saying that we do not have funding to start it because Andina Capital, it's small things such as, who are you talking to? Do you have a friend that you can talk to and say, look, yeah, I have this course that I want and I need to register. Can you help me fundraise for $400? So don't think of the amount of money that you need as huge, but you can take bite sizes in terms of mobilizing for resources until people can trust you, because a lot of people don't want to give money to people that do not have a proven record of effective utilization of resources or transparency and accountability mechanisms that are there. The next thing that we're going to talk about, next slide, Kudzai. Kudzai.
Are we on the finance now? Maureen? Okay, so what we want to talk about is then effective financial management and key principles that you need to understand. So you find that, I think, with NGOs, when someone has a great idea, funders rush towards them. You will see a drove of funders going towards them. But the moment you just mess up, they'll all run away, all at the same time. So it's critical, and these principles for me are key for you as you start your NGO to be aware of. And the first one is around stewardship. The money you're handling is not your money. You know, you're handling money in most cases on behalf of those funders and those partners and the people that you're working with. So it becomes critical to be able to look after other people's money as well, and to be able to account for it. So, you know, accountability becomes key in that you need to be able to say, I received this much money, I spent it on this much, in an open and transparent manner, so that, you know, you're not hiding things, you're open to scrutiny, to the extent that you can share your financials and people can come and take a look should they want to be. So it's really key to have a transparent and open operation in place, but also for yourselves to be people of integrity, because people will look at you as the individual who's running the NGO, and they want to see, are you a person who they can count on? Are you a person of integrity? It becomes a key question. You just need to make sure that you and the people you work with can pass this test as well. But also take a look at viability. How can you start an NGO that is viable and will go beyond just the start that you make? So it becomes critical to be able to come up with plans on how you can then become viable. But also consistency, how you treat funds should be the same. So for example, we have a scholarship fund with our trust where people give in money. But we know it's standard that 15% of our money goes towards administration costs of the money that is raised. So, and that is standard, and we're consistent with all our funders. So everyone is clear from the onset that if they're giving $100, $15 will go towards admin, will cover the bank charges, communication charges, following up on the children they're sponsoring. But also to then just follow accounting standards. It's key for you to make sure then that you're following standards that are set, and then, you know, in that way you won't disappoint your funding partner. So these 7 principles for us are key in then just making sure you've got effective financial management in place. So we just want to take a look at registering NGOs in different places. We won't spend much time on this. So Rumbi, are you here? I hope Rumbi is here. So what we do is we then work with other people in different countries. So if someone asks us for registration in Zambia or Malawi, we're able to then work with our partners there. And in the UK, we work with Rumbi, and I'm hoping she's here.
I am here, yes.
Can you just take us through briefly through how registering an NGO or charity in the UK, just what are the options that people have?
Thank you, Kudzai, and thank you, Maureen. It's been really useful being on this webinar. So in the UK, there's different forms, and I'll just start probably from the bottom of having an unregistered community organization or a community group, which is run by a constitution. So many non-profits start as a community group to test your idea, to see whether there's a need for the service that you're providing. You're able to access grant funding, you're able to open a bank account, so you're able to actually be recognized as a community group that is formed through a constitution. The important thing, of course, is to have a constitution, to have a board, a treasurer, a chairperson, a board member on your constitution and in your community group, and have a committee that runs it. So that's the first one, which is unregistered. You can then have a community interest company, which is registered with Companies House. There's pros and cons to everything, but I'm just going through just quickly the different structures that are available to you. So a community interest company is registered with the Companies House, and that enables you to also draw a salary from your from your organization. So it's similar to like in Zambia, where it says they're a company limited by guarantee, not for profit. So that's a social enterprise. That's the type of organization that I run. So it's got two structures, which is it's a community group as well as a community interest company. So I run it in those two ways. Then you're able to form a charity, where you register with the Charity Commission. And you can also register a charitable incorporated organization, a CIO, registered with the Companies House. So there's different requirements for each one. There's different pros and cons, but just in brief, in summary, I think, because I said just 2 minutes, just the different structures that are available. So there's quite a few options for you. And I think my advice to people, whenever people ask me, I always say start as a community group. Learn how to manage your finances, learn how to, all the things that, you've been talking about in the previous slide about finances, about accountability, about building up trust with funders. Start small and then grow as you go, and then register where with the Charity Commission. You don't have to start big. You can actually start small and work your way up as you develop and grow.
Okay, thanks, Rumpi. Yeah, so you find that maybe in Zimbabwe it's pretty much the same as well, because you can then start with your community common law universitas, which is like an unregistered organization. What you need there is a constitution and members that then sign to this constitution as well. So that option is also there. Another option, and one that's used by most NGOs in Zimbabwe, is then the trust. So you're registered as a trust through the Ministry of Justice. And you need a lawyer to be able to do this. You then register your trust. You need at least 2 trustees. You need to come up with the objectives of your trust, and then you can set it up. It's one of, I think, the fastest ways to set up an NGO in Zimbabwe. Then we have a private voluntary organization. So this is registering through the Ministry of Social Welfare. And what you need here are you need 7 committee members. You need them to get clearance from the police. You need a letter of support from the district and province you're going to work from. And then you can then submit with your constitution as well. So this is registration through the ministry. At the moment, it's taking a bit long to register PVOs. The PVO board is not sitting as regularly as it plans to. Ideally, quarterly, they should be approving NGO registrations, but we've seen some delays being encountered. Which one to register? If you're registered as a PVO, it's a lot easier to work with government structures, but just the registration process itself is what takes a lot of time. So you find a lot of people register a trust, faster to come, within 3 weeks it's done, and then they start operating, and then the trust registered as a PVO, which might take a bit longer as well. So the options are there in terms of what you want to do. And then in Zambia and Malawi as well, it's almost the same in that there's registration through the relevant ministries as NGOs, and then also company limited by guarantee. So you're actually then going through the process of company registration, but the company is not a profit-making organization. Malawi is also pretty stringent on registration with Kongoma and the NGO board of Malawi. So if you're operating a charity or an NGO there in Malawi, you'll be required to register. In Zimbabwe, we have NANGO, but I don't think it's as strict in terms of requiring a registration. So you'll find a lot of organizations operating without registration through NANGO. So these are the different ways to register your NGOs and in the different places. So you'll see there are different options for you, and you can look at the pros and cons and then decide which one to choose. So just in terms of how KFM can then help you with what we've told you so far. 1st of February, we're excited about, we're launching an incubation hub. So we've seen there are lots of people who want to start NGOs, but as we said, they don't know where to start, they don't have the skills, they need help, they want to network with other people doing similar things. So we're going to start a program. It will be a 3-month program where we meet every 2 weeks online. These are online sessions. And then we were discussing different topics. We will start discussing about setting up what's required. We'll be answering people's questions there, providing assistance where people might need it. We're sharing with other people going through the same things that you're going through. So, you'll be able to also then share and find out from others how they've done it. We want to take a look at your boards and share best practice in starting a board. We want to go through all the areas of strategic planning, program management, all that Maureen has been discussing. We'll then be going more in depth into it, and then just helping people to set up and working with them as they go. 3-month period is how long this course will be, and then we'll be charging, I think it'll be $100 a month for the 3 months that we enjoy, that you'll be part of this. But it'll be something that'll be really good because you'll be walking the walk with other people going through the same things, but also with experts that are then helping you to start your NGO and to make sure you cover all the different areas that you need. Secondly, we can then assist with registration. So whether in Zimbabwe you want to register a trust, we're able to do this for you. If you want to register a PVO, we can help you put the documents together. Your committee members, or like your board for a PVO, need to go to the ministry in person for interviews. So all those 7 people that you would have chosen will need to go to the ministry. So we can prep you and help you with preparing the documents, but you ultimately have to go in person there as well. And then in other countries, through our partners that we have, whether it's in the UK or Zambia or Malawi or South Africa, we're then also able to assist you with registration there. For our Tugwi Trust, Rumbi helped us to register Tugwi Trust in the UK. And I can tell you, it's been it was a good move, I think, on our part, because it's then enabled us to tap into some funds which we would not have been able to access just as Tugwi Trust in Zimbabwe. So being able to register in the UK has opened up channels for us that we were starting to already take advantage of. So that's an option that people can look at. If you're registered locally, you can also then look at the option of registering offshore as well, like in the UK as well. But also we then give customized technical assistance because I think you'll find that we're at different stages in terms of where we are with our organization. So the needs might be different. So what we can do, and we've already started doing this from the last session, is then we have a one-on-one consultation, just a free consultation. Mostly it can be on the phone, it can be through Zoom. We then discuss your specific requirements, or we want to know what you want to do. We want to see which areas you specifically need. We want to see if maybe that incubation hub would be best for you, or are you already maybe past that and you just need specific assistance in particular areas. We've seen people needing a lot of research. So people want to start an NGO in Zimbabwe, but they're not too sure who does this work they're doing, or who they can partner up with, or what the requirements are for that specific sector, but they also don't have the time to do the research. So we've had people asking us, can you research this for me, so that I see how feasible my plan is. Or then just formulating your strategy. Maureen is really good at questioning what it is you want to do, so we can work with you to come up with a strategy document in terms of then how you're going to steer your ship over the next 3 or 5 years or so. So we come up with that strategy document as well. We can help you with your board. And as Maureen said, I'm always saying to people, don't limit your board to your friends. Don't forget them. So you need a mix. And I think it's important to have people on your board that you can trust, that have your back, but you also need people that are not too familiar and will come in to bring in technical assistance as well. So for me, the right mix is one where you've got your friends, but you also have people that are coming in who are not so close to you as well, who are able to then assist you. We can help you in finding board members. We can help you in the orientation of boards, or if you want help with putting together the board charters, we're able to do that. Finance, yeah, that's been our area for a long time. So we can then just also help you in terms of putting in place sound financial systems that will make sure that you're accountable as an organization, but also that you are also able to know what's going on. A lot of people are carrying out activities, but not getting enough information in terms of how they are doing. So it's important to be able to get financial information to be able to assess your performance as well. We can also help you with resource mobilization. So the scoping that Maureen was talking about, if you need help with that, we can also then just help you. If you need human resource strategies and systems and putting together contracts for staff, if you want to work with volunteers and need help with just what sort of contracts to have with volunteers or what policies to have with your volunteers, we're able to help with that. And also then the M&E and learning and making sure that as you go ahead, you have in place systems that enable you to learn from what you're doing so that you can improve for the future. Okay, so yeah, in a nutshell, that's it. What we think are the important things, but also how we as KFM can work with you. And I can tell you, for us, this is why we're in business, to be able to help people achieve those dreams that they have. We've seen that we might not be able to go out with you into the field to do the work, but we will contribute by making sure you've got that operational support that will enable you to then meet your dreams, to be able to achieve that calling that you have, to be able to help the youth you want to help, and the inequalities, poverty people we're talking about. For that to happen, you need in place sound operational systems that will help you to achieve your dreams, and that's what we're there for. We want to talk to you and find out what your needs are so that we can see how to work together to assist you. Yeah, I don't know if there are any questions that we can round off the session with that people might have. Tafazo, I don't know if there are any questions.
Yes, there are questions. There are questions in the chat box. Phyllis was asking, how much are the lawyer fees for a trust?
Okay, so in Zimbabwe, it's $400 to register your trust. It comes out in about 3 weeks. We're not too sure with the lockdown that's there now, what effect that will have. But ordinarily, within 3 weeks, you would have the trust out, and it's $400 with the lawyers that we use.
Okay, and Paul Siziba says, she's asking that, do you offer help to register a charity in the UK?
Yes, so we can then also help you with the UK. If we can then put you in touch with Rumbi, who will then assist with that registration. So yes, we do.
Okay, and the other question was actually answered by Maureen, the one that came from Dr. Gwenzi, when she asked about her company, her NGO, and the consultancy, yes.
Right, fantastic.
Those are the only 3 questions that are in the chat box.
Okay, so I don't know if anyone has any other questions before we round off. Feel free to ask.
Just to say thank you for an informative presentation to all of you at KFM. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Busi. Okay. So if there's no one else, thank you everyone for joining us. Michelle has shared the contact details. Feel free to get in touch and let us know if you need assistance. We're excited to see Tanaka volunteering to help. So, it's good that we're already maybe creating networks here as well. And let's stay in touch. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. Let's touch base, and we can see how to help those communities in need as well. And we'll share the recording after this. I think tomorrow we'll share the recording with everyone as well. I know the weather's not too good here, so I hope you were able to hear us clearly, but we've got a couple of thunderstorms, and so I know it might have been unstable, but I hope everyone managed to at least get the critical information that we were sharing. So thank you, everybody. Have a good evening, and then please stay safe.